Hello everybody, welcome back. It's quite windy in my garden today, so I hope you're going to be able to hear me okay. So yesterday we looked at the structure and function of different parts of the flower, and maybe you've had a go at pressing some flowers to use in some artwork in a few weeks' time. Today I'm going to show you how you can use flowers and maybe leaves or anything else natural that you find to do some artwork, making your own ink or paint. Now I've collected some bits and pieces here, so I've got some dandelion heads that I've collected, all these yellow ones, some little geranium flowers from inside my garden, and just some different leaves that have been growing on different plants. So you can see that they're all different colours, and the things that make plants all different colours are called special chemicals called pigments. So pigment is just a coloured chemical inside the cells of these different plants. So the dandelion contains lots of yellow pigment, the geranium contains lots of pink pigment, and the leaves contain lots of a green pigment called chlorophyll, which is actually used by the leaves to make their own food. So what we need to do in order to be able to use those colours in our artwork is we need to get that pigment out of the cells so that we can make an ink or a paint from it. So I've got a bit of special equipment here which you might have in your kitchen at home. I've got one of these which is called a pestle and mortar, and these are used for grinding things up. Now if you haven't got a pestle and mortar at home, it doesn't matter. You can use a plastic bowl or container of some kind, and if you've got a wooden spoon in your kitchen, the handle of a wooden spoon is really good for crushing things up. But you'll need to ask an adult first, because it might be that some of the colour, some of the pigments go onto the wood and colour the wood. So check with an adult first, but anything like that, some sort of plastic container and something that you can grind it with, a wooden spoon or a stick, something like that would be fine. I'm going to use my pestle and mortar. So the first thing to do, let's do my dandelions first, is that I want to just get the yellow bit. So you can see on the dandelion head there's some green bit at the bottom. I don't want that, I just want the yellow bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick all of these petals off and put the green bit to one side and just get as much of the yellow petals into my pestle and mortar as possible. Just the yellow bit, so there's a bit of sort of white fluffy stuff in there as well. I don't want that, so I want the petals. And do you remember yesterday we were talking about the stamen made up of the anther and the filament that make the pollen? That's all nice and yellow, so I'm going to put as much of that as possible into my pestle and mortar. And what I'm going to need to do is to get the pigment to come out of the cells. So I need to break the cells open to let that yellow pigment, that yellow chemical come out. So I need something sort of gritty that I can grind it with to help the pigment to come out. And the best thing to use for that is a little bit of salt. So I've got lots and lots of dandelion petals in my pestle and mortar. What I'm going to add to it is just a little pinch of salt. Now I've got some sea salt here which is quite grainy, and that's just to make it a little bit rough, so just a little sprinkle of salt. So if you've got some salt at home, you could put a little sprinkle of salt in as well, and that helps to grind it up to get the chemical out. And then the last thing we need is some kind of solvent, a liquid that we can get the pigment to come out into and make it turn yellow. So you can just use water, but actually nail varnish remover is really good pigment to use. So I'm going to add just a little splash of nail varnish remover, not much, just a tiny little bit, and I'll show you what I've got in my pestle and mortar now. So I've got my dandelion leaves, little pinch of salt, my dandelion petals rather, little pinch of salt, and a tiny little dribble of nail varnish remover, maybe just a tiny little bit more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start grinding now. So with your pestle and mortar or your wooden spoon in your bowl, you're not pounding, we're not bashing it, we're grinding it. So it's like you're sort of stirring it round. You're trying to crush those petals and get all of that yellow to come out. Now this is a really good time of year to do this kind of activity because there's so many beautiful colours around in all the spring flowers, and everything's fresh and young and growing, so the petals are quite juicy. There's lots of pigment in them, so you get lots of lovely colour to come out. So I'm just carrying on grinding away, and what you'll find is that your petals sort of turn into a gooey pulp, a gooey mess, and you can see my yellow pigment, my yellow chemical is there at the bottom. So I'd be able to use that as some yellow ink or some yellow paint. I can just dip a paintbrush in it and do some painting with that pigment. I'm going to do exactly the same process with my green leaves and my pink petals. So what I might do with my yellow is tip it out into a cup, keep that separate, do the same with my green and pink so that I've got 3 different colours, then I'm going to have a go at doing some painting with it. So let's see how I get on. So that's how I got on with my painting, using natural paints. My dandelion paint was really successful. It made a beautifully bright yellow colour, and my leaves gave me lots and lots of lovely chlorophyll, that lovely green pigment, a nice bright green. My pink geraniums didn't quite work how I expected. I think maybe I had a bit too much of the green part of the flower in there, and also I think what's happened is that the nail varnish has actually bleached that pink pigment. It's turned it white, so that one didn't really work very well, but never mind, that happens sometimes. But I was really pleased with my green and yellow pigments, and here is my finished painting. I think it looks like maybe a buttercup or a daffodil. So I wonder if you've got lots of things that you could use to make natural paints from, flowers or moss, grass, any leaves, all sorts of different colours that you might be able to find in your garden or an outside space, or maybe when you're out for a walk you could collect things. And don't forget, if you haven't got a pestle and mortar, you can still do this. You just need something that you can crush them up in. Something like a plastic bowl and a wooden spoon would work really well. So have lots of fun collecting lots of pigments and making some paint. And tomorrow we'll be having a much closer look at leaves. See you then. Bye.